The ancient towers of Velith Prime stretched toward a dying sun that flickered like a candle in its final moments. Deep beneath the crystalline spires, the Relani Council gathered in emergency session for what might be their last time. The chambers. Bioluminescent walls pulsed with nervous energy as hundreds of delegates whispered in their melodic language about the impossible choice before them. Thale adjusted his ceremonial robes and stood before the assembly. His silver-blue skin had lost its natural shimmer over the past months as stress consumed him. The position of ambassador had never been meant for situations like this. His role was diplomacy between the peaceful city-states of their world, not deciding the fate of their entire species. Fellow Relani, his voice carried across the silent chamber, our sun dies faster each day. The stellar cascade our ancestors triggered cannot be stopped with our current technology. We have perhaps 4 months before Velith Prime becomes uninhabitable. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew the facts, but hearing them spoken aloud made them more terrible. Their beautiful world, with its floating gardens and crystal cities, would soon be a frozen tomb drifting through space. Scientific Director Cora rose from her seat near the center platform. Her research team had worked without rest for 3 years trying to solve the crisis. Dark circles ringed her large eyes, and her usually pristine laboratory coat showed stains from countless failed experiments. The evacuation ships can carry 2 million of our people at most, she said. That represents less than 10% of our population. The remaining 90% will perish when the thermal cascade completes. Her voice remained steady, but her hands trembled as she spoke. The chamber erupted in anguished cries. Families would be torn apart, ancient bloodlines would end, millennia of art, culture, and knowledge would vanish into the cosmic dark. Fail raised his hand for silence. There is one option we have not yet considered. We could send a distress signal beyond our world. Perhaps other spacefaring civilizations exist who might help us. The suggestion stunned the assembly into quiet. The Relani had never encountered alien life despite centuries of searching the nearby star systems. Their technology was advanced, but focused inward on their peaceful society. They had radio telescopes and quantum sensors, but no weapons beyond simple security devices. The idea of contacting unknown aliens terrified many of them. Council Elder Dran stood slowly. His ancient frame shook with age and worry. What if these aliens are hostile? What if we invite conquerors to our dying world? At least now we die. Free but extinct, Cora replied sharply. I would rather risk enslavement than guarantee annihilation. If aliens exist with the technology to travel between stars, they might possess the knowledge to save our sun. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued that death with dignity was preferable to begging unknown species for help. Others insisted they had a duty to try everything possible to preserve their people and culture. The chamber grew, heated as voices rose and tempers flared. Finally, Thale called for order. We must vote. All those in favor of sending a distress signal to any listening civilizations indicate now. The vote was close. 312 delegates in favor, 287 against. By a narrow margin, the Relani would reach out. To the stars, Cora's team worked through the night preparing the message. They included detailed information about their location, their dying star, the number of people needing evacuation, and their desperate timeline. The signal would be broadcast on multiple frequencies and energy types to maximize the chance of detection. The transmission array, built into the highest tower of their capital city, had never been used at full power. As the massive dish rotated toward the galactic center, energy coursed through crystalline conduits that hadn't carried such loads in decades. Warning lights flashed as the system strained beyond its normal limits. Signal strength at maximum, reported the technician monitoring the array. Broadcasting on all frequencies. The message will reach nearby star systems within days, distant ones within months. Thale watched the energy readings spike as their plea for help raced toward distant worlds. What civilizations might receive it? Would they be peaceful explorers like the Relani imagined themselves to be? Would they be conquerors looking for easy prey? Or would they simply ignore the message entirely? Days passed with no response. The sun continued its death spiral, growing dimmer each morning. Panic began spreading through the population as the reality of their situation became undeniable. Some Rilani fled to the polar regions where the cold might grant them a few extra weeks of life. Others gathered in the great temples, seeking comfort in ancient prayers. Cora buried herself in increasingly desperate research. Her teams tested radical theories about stellar manipulation, gravitational engineering, and exotic matter injection. Every attempt failed. Their technology, so advanced in biotechnology and sustainable energy, proved woefully inadequate for the cosmic forces consuming their star. The evacuation ships began loading priority passengers. Government officials, essential scientists, and cultural preservationists received the first berths. The selection process broke countless hearts as families were separated and individuals faced the terrible choice between survival and staying with loved ones. 3 weeks after the signal went out, everything changed. The communication array detected an incoming transmission on primitive electromagnetic frequencies. The message was crude compared to Rilani quantum communication, but unmistakably artificial in origin. Thale rushed to the communication center as technicians struggled to decode the alien response. The signal was strong, suggesting the senders possessed significant transmission power. More disturbing, preliminary analysis indicated the source was moving toward their system at tremendous speed. "Ambassador," the lead technician called out. "We have the translation matrix working. The message is, it's in response to our distress call?" The chamber fell silent as the alien words filled the air through their translation system. The voice was harsh and mechanical compared to the musical tones of Rilani's speech. "We are humans. We received your call for help. Our relief fleet is already en route to your location. Prepare for standard first contact and emergency evacuation protocols. Estimated arrival in 18 days. Hold on, we're coming." The message ended, leaving the Rilani staring at each other in shock and growing dread. These humans had responded faster than thought possible and were already traveling toward them. More terrifying still, they spoke of protocols and procedures, as if they regularly encountered such crises. Thale felt his heart sink as he realized what they might have done. In their desperation to save their people, they had potentially invited something far worse than extinction to their dying world. Strange dreams haunted Cora's sleep cycles as she worked in her laboratory beneath the dying light of Velith Prime's sun. The human message had arrived 3 days ago, and since then her research team had intercepted dozens of additional transmissions from the approaching alien fleet. Each new intercept painted a more disturbing picture of what was coming to their world. The humans communicated constantly among their ships using unencrypted channels, seemingly unconcerned about eavesdropping. Their casual conversations revealed details that chilled the Rilani to their cores. They spoke of operational zones and resource assessment and population processing, with the efficiency of a species that had done this many times before. "Director, you need to hear this latest intercept," her assistant Nima called from across the laboratory. The young researcher's bioluminescent patches flickered with anxiety as she replayed the human transmission. The mechanical voice filled the chamber. "Delta Squadron, your sector sweep shows mineral deposits consistent with heavy industrial capacity. Begin preliminary extraction surveys while the main fleet handles population logistics. Remember, we need those materials for the refugee ship construction." Cora's blood chilled. The humans were already planning to strip mine their world before the evacuation was even complete. They had invited raiders to feast on their dying planet's corpse. Ambassador Thale entered the laboratory without his usual formal announcement. His official robes hung loosely on his frame, and his normally perfect posture showed the weight of guilt and fear. "What have we learned about our approaching guests?" "Nothing good," Cora replied grimly. She activated the holographic display, showing their compiled intelligence on human communications. Their fleet consists of 47 vessels, ranging from small scouts to massive ships they call city-class evacuators, They've been scanning our system for 3 days, cataloging everything from atmospheric composition to asteroid mineral content. The display showed the humans' projected approach route. Instead of taking a direct path to Velith Prime, their fleet had spread out across the outer system, deploying sensor networks and what their communications referred to as strategic positioning assets. "They're surrounding us," Thel observed, with growing dread. "This isn't a rescue mission. It's a conquest fleet using our distress call as justification for occupation." Nima pulled up another intercept. "Listen to this one. It's from their fleet commander to something they call Central Command." The transmission crackled with static as the human voice spoke. "Command, this is Fleet Admiral Bell reporting on Operation Distant Harbor. The Rolani crisis is worse than initial estimates suggested. We're looking at a complete stellar collapse within 90 days. Population exceeds 20 million souls. Repeat, 20 million souls. Recommend immediate deployment of additional city ships and industrial fabricators. We're going to need everything we've got for this one." The word souls puzzled the Rolani translators. Their language had no equivalent concept. The humans seemed to assign some special significance to individual beings that went beyond mere biological existence. "They're calling for reinforcements," Thale said. 20 million Rolani represent enough slave labor to build their empire for generations. More disturbing were the humans' tactical discussions. They planned landing zones for ground operations and spoke of securing key infrastructure before beginning population transfers. Their language was filled with military terminology that suggested a species born for warfare and conquest. Cora accessed the final category of intercepts that had kept her awake for days. "These are the worst ones. Listen to how they talk about conflict and violence." The recordings played examples of human casual conversation between fleet personnel. They spoke matter-of-factly about something called the Water Wars, where billions had died fighting over resources. They mentioned the Lunar Rebellion and the Mars Independence Movement, as if interplanetary warfare was routine for their species. Most terrifying were their references to other alien species. The humans spoke of the Centauri incident and what happened to the vegan colonies in tones that suggested these were cautionary tales rather than diplomatic successes. "They've done this before," Nemo whispered. "We're not their first victims." The laboratory's communication system chimed with an incoming priority message. Thale accepted the transmission, expecting another report from the orbital monitoring stations. Instead, a human face appeared on their display screen. The alien was bipedal like the Rolani, but broader and more muscular. Its skin was dark brown, and strange fur grew from the top of its head. Most unsettling were its eyes, small, forward-facing predator eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they looked upon. "Greetings, people of Velith Prime. I am Commander Bell of the Human Emergency Response Fleet. We will be entering your system in 12 days to begin evacuation operations. Please prepare the following information for our arrival: complete population census by geographic region, industrial capacity assessments, available raw materials inventory, and cultural preservation priorities." The human's voice was firm and commanding. This was not a request, but a series of orders delivered with military precision. "We understand your sun is failing rapidly," Bell continued. "Our scientists are analyzing your stellar data to determine if stabilization is possible. Meanwhile, our evacuation specialists are designing refugee ships capable of housing your entire population. We will need complete cooperation from your government to ensure optimal efficiency." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Rolani staring at the blank screen. The human had not asked for permission or offered negotiation. They were coming whether the Rolani wanted them or not. "Optimal efficiency," Thale repeated bitterly. "They make us sound like cargo to be transported." Over the following days, more human messages arrived with increasingly detailed demands. They wanted atmospheric composition data, gravity measurements, biological compatibility assessments, and detailed maps of population centers. Each request was phrased as a necessity for successful evacuation. But the Relani began to see the pattern of an occupying force gathering. Intelligence. The human fleet's approach became visible to naked-eye observation as they drew closer to Velith Prime. Their ships were massive geometric structures that looked more like Mogul fortresses than rescue vessels. No elegant curves or artistic design elements softened their brutal functionality. These were machines built by and for a species that expected conflict at every turn. Captain Nova of the Relani Defense Corps stood on the observation deck of their orbital monitoring station, watching the human fleet take positions throughout their system. His security forces consisted of 50 lightly armed patrol craft designed for search and rescue operations. Against the human armada, they would last perhaps minutes in a direct confrontation. "They're not even trying to appear peaceful," he reported to the surface. "Every ship bristles with weapon systems. Their formation suggests they expect resistance and are prepared to overcome it through overwhelming force." The final human transmission before their arrival contained a single sentence that confirmed the Relani's worst fears about what they had brought upon themselves. "Prepare for standard occupation protocols. Human authority will be established immediately upon arrival for the safety and security of all involved parties." The word occupation needed no translation. The Relani had invited their own conquerors to witness the death of their world and claim its remains. In 18 hours, everything they had ever known would belong to an alien species that spoke of war and conquest as casually as the Relani discussed art and philosophy. Thal stood in his chambers that night, looking up at the dying sun that had nurtured his people for 10,000 years. Tomorrow the humans would arrive, and the Relani civilization would either be saved or enslaved. Either way, they would never be free again. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Velith system like predators materializing from cosmic darkness. 47 massive vessels dropped into normal space with precision that spoke of countless similar operations. Their formation was perfect, their timing flawless, and their immediate deployment of sensor drones suggested a species that left nothing to chance. On the surface of Velith Prime, millions of Relani looked up at their dim sun and wondered if they would live to see another sunset. The humans had arrived exactly when promised, neither early nor late, with the mechanical punctuality of a species that treated crisis response as routine military operation. Captain Nova watched from his orbital station as the alien ships spread throughout the system like an infection taking hold. The largest vessels, which the humans called city-class evacuators, were each the size of small moons. Their hulls bristled with communication arrays, docking bays, and weapon systems that could probably level continents. Smaller ships swarmed around them like worker insects serving their massive queens. "Surface control, this is Orbital Monitor 7, Nova reported to the planetary government. "The human fleet has established a complete perimeter around our system. They've deployed sensor nets at every major gravitational point and positioned what appear to be defensive stations at strategic locations. Whatever they're planning, they've made sure we can't leave without their permission." The human commander's next transmission arrived within minutes of their fleet's arrival. Commander Bell's image appeared on every communication screen across Velith Prime simultaneously, suggesting the aliens had somehow taken control of their entire planetary network without permission. "People of Velith Prime, I am Commander Bell of the Human Emergency Response Fleet. We have arrived to assist with your evacuation and provide humanitarian aid during this stellar crisis. Effective immediately, the following protocols will be implemented for the safety and efficiency of all operations." The list that followed sounded more like martial law than rescue procedures. Humans would establish coordination centers in every major population area. All Relani civilians were to register for processing at these centers within 48 hours. Industrial facilities would be placed under protective custody to prevent damage during the crisis. Most ominously, the Relani government was to provide full cooperation and transparency with human authorities. "These measures are temporary and necessary," Bell continued. "Our species has extensive experience with emergency evacuations and stellar disasters. Your compliance with our procedures will ensure the maximum number of survivors and the preservation of your cultural heritage. The transmission ended with coordinates for the human landing zones and a countdown timer showing 36 hours until mandatory registration begins. Ambassador Thale stood in the emergency session of what remained of the Rulani Council. Half the delegates had already fled to the outer settlements, hoping distance might provide some protection from the human occupation. Those who remained faced an impossible choice between submission and certain death. "They're treating us like refugees in our own world," Council Elder Dran said bitterly. "We asked for help, not conquest. What choice do we have?" replied Counselor Vera. "Our son dies whether we resist or cooperate. At least with the humans, some of our people might survive." The debate was interrupted by reports from the surface. Human ships were landing in the designated zones with industrial precision. Instead of the expected military deployment, however, something unexpected was happening. The humans were building massive fabrication units deployed from their ships and began constructing enormous structures at impossible speed. Within hours, entire complexes rose from empty ground, complete with living quarters, medical facilities, and what appeared to be refugee processing centers. The construction was efficient beyond anything the Rulani had ever witnessed. Scientific Director Cora monitored the human activity from her laboratory sensor array. "They're not just building temporary structures," she reported to the council. "These are permanent installations designed to house millions of people for extended periods. The humans are planning for a long-term operation." More disturbing were the industrial fabricators the humans deployed throughout the system. These massive machines began consuming asteroids and converting the raw materials into prefabricated ship components. Within a single day, the humans had tripled their manufacturing capacity and showed no signs of slowing down. "They're strip mining our entire system," Captain Nova observed with growing alarm. "Every asteroid, every moon, every resource they can reach is being converted into their industrial base." The first direct contact came sooner than expected. A human shuttle requested permission to land at the capital city's diplomatic complex. Ambassador Thale reluctantly granted clearance, knowing they lacked the power to refuse. The human delegation that emerged from the shuttle consisted of 3 individuals in what appeared to be military uniforms. Their leader, a tall female with dark skin and penetrating eyes, approached the Rulani reception committee with confident strides. "I am Colonel Adams, Deputy Commander of Evacuation Operations," she announced. "I need to speak with your senior leadership immediately. We have a lot to accomplish and very little time to do it." Thale stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Thale, representing the Rulani Council. We welcome your assistance, though we have concerns." "About your methods?" Adams nodded briskly. "Your concerns are noted and will be addressed as time permits. Right now, I need detailed information about your population distribution, critical infrastructure, and cultural priorities. Our evacuation specialists are designing refugee ships, but we need your input to ensure they meet your species-specific needs." The conversation that followed confused and surprised Thale. Instead of the harsh demands he expected, Adams asked detailed questions about Rulani biology, social structure, and cultural requirements. She took careful notes when he explained their need for bioluminescent environments and their complex family groupings that couldn't be separated. "We'll incorporate those specifications into the ship designs," Adams assured him. "Our goal is to preserve your civilization, not just your population. That means maintaining your social structures and cultural practices as much as possible during the transition." Over the following days, the human operation unfolded with mechanical efficiency that both impressed and terrified the Rulani. Registration centers processed thousands of civilians per hour, but instead of the harsh interrogations they expected, families found themselves interviewed by specialists who asked about dietary needs, medical conditions, and personal belongings. They wanted preserved the humans deployed medical teams that provided free health care to any Rulani who needed it. Their doctors worked alongside Rulani physicians, sharing knowledge and techniques while treating everything from chronic conditions to minor injuries. No payment was requested, no debts recorded. Most shocking was the human response to Rilani. Children. The aliens showed extraordinary care around the young, establishing special play areas and educational programs designed to reduce trauma during the evacuation process. Human soldiers, whom the Rilani had expected to be brutal conquerors, could be seen playing games with Rilani children and teaching them simple words in the human language. "They're not behaving like occupiers," Cora reported to the council after visiting one of the human complexes. "Their medical facilities are better than our hospitals. Their food distribution is more efficient than our own supply chains. If this is conquest, it's unlike anything in our historical records." The industrial operations throughout the system continued at staggering pace. Human fabricators consumed raw materials and produced refugee ships designed specifically for Rilani physiology. The vessels included artificial bioluminescent environments, family quarter configurations, and even spaces for cultural gatherings and religious observances. Commander Bell made regular reports to the Rilani leadership, sharing progress updates and requesting feedback on evacuation priorities. Her tone remained formal and military, but her actions suggested genuine concern for Rilani welfare rather than exploitative conquest. The most surprising development came when human scientists approached Cora's research team with an unexpected proposal. Instead of simply evacuating the population, they wanted to attempt saving Velith Prime's dying sun. "We've analyzed your stellar data," explained Dr. Torres, the human chief scientist. "The cascade effect might be reversible using controlled fusion injection techniques we've developed. It's dangerous and experimental, but the alternative is watching your world die." As the human operation entered its second week, the Rilani began to realize that their assumptions about these aliens might have been completely wrong. The humans acted like conquerors but worked like saviors. They spoke like soldiers but cared. Like healers, Ambassador Thales stood on his balcony one evening, watching human ships ferry supplies and personnel between the surface and orbital construction sites. The dying sun cast its dim light over a world transforming before his eyes. Whatever these humans truly were, they had brought something the Rilani had lost in their desperation: hope for survival beyond mere existence. Dr. Torres wiped sweat from her forehead as she reviewed the stellar manipulation calculations for the 1,000th time. The human science team had been working in shifts around the clock for 2 weeks, pushing themselves to exhaustion as they developed a plan to save Velith Prime's dying sun. Their temporary laboratory, built from prefabricated modules in the capital city's outskirts, hummed with activity at all hours. "The fusion injection array needs to be precisely positioned at 17 points around the stellar corona," she explained. To Cora and the assembled Rilani scientists, "We'll use controlled antimatter charges to create injection channels, then flood the star's core with fresh hydrogen from the outer system's gas giant." Cora studied the holographic display showing the proposed operation. "The energy requirements are enormous. How do you intend to power such a massive undertaking?" Torres smiled tiredly. "We've already begun harvesting solar plasma from your outer system star. Our collection ships are gathering enough raw energy to power the injection sequence. It's dangerous work, but we've done similar operations before." The casual way the human spoke of manipulating stellar forces amazed the Rilani. These aliens treated cosmic engineering projects as routine challenges to be overcome through determination and hard work across the planet. The human evacuation operation continued with relentless efficiency. Engineer Adams led construction. Teams that worked 18-hour shifts building refugee ships in orbital shipyards that hadn't existed a month ago. The vessels were marvels of rapid engineering, designed specifically for Rilani physiology and cultural needs. "We need another 1,000 family modules for the next ship," Adams reported during the daily progress meeting. The Rilani extended. "Family groups are larger than our initial estimates. We'll need to modify the living quarter configurations to accommodate their social structure." Her team responded without complaint. though they had been working without real rest for weeks. The humans pushed themselves harder than any slave driver would dare, but they did it willingly because lives depended on their efforts. Captain Nova visited one of the completed refugee ships and found himself amazed by the attention to detail. The humans had studied Rilani culture extensively, incorporating bioluminescent gardens, communal gathering spaces, and even small temples for religious observances. These weren't prison ships or cargo haulers, but genuine attempts to preserve Rilani civilization during their exodus. "Why do you care so much?" he asked Adams as they toured the vessel's family quarters. "We're not your people. Our survival doesn't benefit your species." Adams paused in her inspection of the environmental systems. "Because that's what we do. When someone sends out a distress call, we answer it. When people are dying, we save them. It's not about benefit or politics or strategy. It's about being human." The answer puzzled Nova. The concept of helping strangers without expectation of reward was foreign to Rilani culture. Their society was built on careful reciprocity and mutual obligation. The humans seemed to operate on entirely different principles. In the medical facilities the humans had established, Dr. Kim treated Rilani patients with the same intensity she would show her own species. The human medical teams had quickly learned Rilani physiology and were providing healthcare superior to what most patients had received in their entire lives. "The radiation exposure from your dying son has caused widespread cellular damage," she explained to Ambassador Thale during his medical examination. "We're treating everyone we can, but prevention is more important than cure. That's why the evacuation timeline is so critical." Thale noticed the exhaustion in her eyes. "When did you last sleep, Doctor?" "Sleep is a luxury we can't afford right now," Kim replied. "There are too many people who need help. We'll rest when everyone is safe." The human approach to crisis response fascinated and disturbed the Rilani in equal measure. These aliens treated desperate situations as personal challenges that demanded everything they could give. Failure was not an option they would consider, even when success seemed impossible. Scientific Director Cora found herself working alongside human researchers who shared their knowledge freely and completely, instead of the secretive, competitive approach she expected from a conquering species. The humans actively sought to teach the Rilani their advanced technologies. "Your people will need to maintain these systems during the journey to your new worlds," explained Dr. Warren, the human engineering specialist. "We're not just giving you ships, we're teaching you how to build and repair them yourselves. Independence is more valuable than dependence." The collaborative research yielded surprising discoveries. Rilani biotechnology complemented human industrial capabilities in ways neither species had anticipated. Together, they developed hybrid systems that were more efficient and sustainable than either could have achieved alone. As the stellar manipulation project neared readiness, the true scope of human capabilities became apparent. They had positioned massive energy collectors throughout the system, built injection platforms capable of precise stellar targeting, and coordinated logistics that would have challenged a galactic empire. "How many worlds have you saved?" Thale asked Commander Bell during one of their regular briefings. 17 successful stellar interventions, 43 planetary evacuations, and probably 100 smaller operations, Bell replied matter-of-factly. "We've lost 3 worlds where we arrived too late and 2 where the local governments refused to cooperate. Those failures keep us awake at night." The admission that humans had failed and felt guilt over those failures revealed something important about their character. They weren't gods or perfect saviors, just people who refused to give up when others needed help. The evacuation ships neared completion as Velith Prime's sun continued its decline. 80% of the Rilani population had been processed and assigned berths on vessels designed for long-term habitation. The remaining 20% would be evacuated on the final ships currently under construction, but the humans weren't satisfied with mere survival. They wanted to give the Rilani something more precious than safety. They wanted to give them hope. "The stellar injection is ready," Torres announced to the combined human and Rilani leadership. We have a 67% chance of success based on our computer models. If it works, your sun will stabilize and begin producing normal energy. Output within 6 months. The odds were better than anyone had dared hope when the crisis began. More importantly, the humans had shown the Relani that impossible problems could be solved through determination, cooperation, and refusing to accept defeat. Ambassador Thale stood in the command center as the final preparations began for the stellar injection sequence. Around him, human and Relani technicians worked side by side, monitoring systems that would determine the fate of an entire world. "Regardless of what happens," he said to Commander Bell, "our people will never forget what you've done for us." Bell nodded seriously. "And if this works, your people will have learned something valuable about solving problems that seem impossible. The galaxy needs more species who won't give up when the situation looks hopeless." As the countdown began for the stellar injection, Thale realized that the humans had given them something more valuable than rescue. They had shown the Relani what it meant to fight for others, to push beyond their limits when lives were at stake, and to treat the survival of strangers as seriously as their own. The humans hadn't just come to save them. They had come to teach them how to save themselves and others who might one day need help. In a galaxy that seemed indifferent to suffering, humanity had chosen to care, and they were showing other species how to care as well. The stellar injection sequence began at dawn on what might have been Velith Prime's final day. Across the planet, 20 million Relani watched their dying sun through protective filters as human ships positioned themselves at precise coordinates around the stellar corona. The massive energy collectors that had been harvesting plasma for weeks now focused their accumulated power towards 17 injection points mapped by human scientists. Ambassador Thale stood in the observation dome of the orbital command station, surrounded by human and Relani technicians, monitoring the most ambitious engineering project either species had ever attempted. The countdown proceeded with mechanical precision, each second bringing them closer to either salvation or spectacular failure. "Injection sequence commencing in 10 seconds, announced Dr. Torres from her position at the primary control console. "All stations report ready status." Commander Bell watched the tactical displays showing the positions of her fleet around Velith Prime's sun. 17 ships would need to execute perfectly synchronized antimatter detonations to create the injection channels. One destined explosion could destabilize the entire operation and accelerate the star's death. "Execute," Bell commanded. The antimatter charges detonated in perfect sequence, creating temporary channels through the stellar corona. Immediately, the human ships began pumping concentrated hydrogen plasma directly into the star's core, flooding the dying fusion reactions with fresh fuel. For long minutes, nothing visible happened. The sun continued its dim flicker while instruments measured forces beyond normal comprehension occurring within its depths. Then, gradually, the stellar output began to increase. "It's working," Torres breathed as her instruments detected the first signs of renewed fusion activity. "The injection is taking hold. Core temperature is rising, fusion rate is stabilizing." Over the following hours, Velith Prime's sun grew brighter for the first time in 3 years. The light wasn't yet strong enough to fully warm the planet, but it represented hope that had seemed impossible just weeks before. Scientific Director Cora monitored all the stellar readings from her laboratory. "The fusion reactions are stable and increasing. Dr. Torres, your calculations were correct. The star will return to normal output within 6 months." The success of the stellar injection sent celebrations throughout the Relani population, but the humans remained focused on their work. Commander Bell knew that even with the sun saved, the planet would need months to recover from the damage caused by 3 years of declining energy. The evacuation ships would still be needed to house most of the population during the recovery. Period. "The success of the stellar operation doesn't change our mission," Bell announced to her fleet commanders. "These people still need safe housing and life support during the planetary recovery. We continue construction of the refugee vessels and maintain support operations until Velith Prime is fully habitable again." The human commitment to seeing the operation through to completion even after achieving the primary objective, impressed. The Rilani leadership. These aliens didn't consider their job finished simply because the immediate crisis had passed. Engineer Adams led the final phase of construction on the refugee city ships. Even though they might not be needed for permanent evacuation, the vessels would serve as orbital habitats during the months of planetary recovery. Her teams worked with the same intensity as before, knowing that comfortable temporary housing was crucial for maintaining morale during the transition period. The children need schools, the adults need jobs, and everyone needs hope. Adams explained to her construction supervisors, "These ships aren't just shelters, they're communities. We're building places where people can live with dignity while their world heals." The attention to psychological and social needs, not just physical survival, demonstrated the depth of human understanding about crisis response. They had clearly learned through experience that saving lives was only the first step in preserving a civilization. Dr. Kim established permanent medical facilities on several of the refugee ships, training Rilani doctors in advanced techniques while learning about Rilani physiology herself. The medical exchange benefited both species and created lasting relationships between human and Rilani healers. "Knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied," Kim explained to her Rilani colleagues. "Someday you might encounter another species facing medical crises. The techniques we're teaching you could save lives we'll never know about." As the weeks passed and Velith Prime's sun continued strengthening, the true scope of human achievement became apparent. They had not only saved a dying star but had fundamentally transformed how the Rilani understood what was possible when facing seemingly insurmountable challenges. Captain Nova found himself assigned as liaison between Rilani security forces and human fleet operations. What he discovered during daily briefings challenged everything he thought he knew about military organization. The humans weren't conquerors in the traditional sense. They were problem solvers who had organized their entire society around responding to crises. "Every human child learns basic emergency response protocols," explained Colonel Adams during one of their coordination meetings. "We don't have a separate military and civilian population. We're all part of the same emergency response network. When disasters happen anywhere in human space, everyone contributes according to their abilities." The concept amazed Nova. Rilani society had always maintained clear distinctions between different roles and responsibilities. The idea of an entire species organizing itself around mutual aid seemed both inspiring and terrifying. 3 months after the stellar injection, Velith Prime's ecosystems began recovering. Frozen rivers started flowing again, dormant plants began growing, and the planet's weather systems resumed normal patterns. The refugee ships orbiting overhead were no longer emergency shelters but temporary cities where Rilani families waited for their homeworld to become fully habitable again. Ambassador Thale received regular reports from the human construction teams, who were helping rebuild damaged infrastructure on the surface. Their work was careful and respectful, incorporating Rilani architectural preferences while adding human engineering improvements for disaster resistance. "We're not trying to remake your world in our image," Commander Bell assured him during one of their weekly briefings. "We're helping you build a stronger version of what you already had. The next time Velith Prime faces a crisis, your people will be better prepared to handle it." The emphasis on teaching self-sufficiency rather than creating dependence revealed the deeper philosophy behind human crisis response. They didn't want to create clients or subjects. They wanted to create partners capable of helping others. Dr. Torres spent her final weeks on Velith Prime working with Rilani scientists to establish monitoring systems that would detect stellar instability centuries before they became dangerous. The early warning network would give future generations time to take preventive action rather than waiting for emergency intervention. "Science isn't just about understanding the universe," she explained to Cora's research team. "It's about using that understanding to protect people. Every discovery should make someone safer or happier or more capable of helping others." The collaboration between human and Rilani researchers had produced technological advances that neither species could have achieved alone. The hybrid bio-industrial systems they developed were more efficient and sustainable than purely mechanical alternatives. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Commander Bell made an offer that would change the course of Rilani civilization. Forever, she invited them to join what humans called the Galactic Emergency Response Network, a voluntary alliance of species committed to answering distress calls anywhere in the galaxy. "We're not a government or an empire," Bell explained to the assembled Rilani leadership. "We're a mutual aid society. When member species face crises they can't handle alone, the network responds. In return, each member contributes their unique capabilities to help others." The proposal represented everything the humans had demonstrated. During their time on Velith Prime, instead of conquest or exploitation, they offered partnership in a cause larger than any single species. Council Elder Dran, who had initially opposed sending the distress signal, now spoke in favor of joining the network. "These humans have shown us what we could become if we dedicated ourselves to helping others the way they helped us. We would be honored to serve alongside them." The vote was unanimous. The Rilani committed themselves to maintaining emergency response capabilities and answering distress calls from other species facing crises. They had learned that the most meaningful way to honor their rescue was to rescue others in turn. 6. Months after the human arrival, Velith Prime's sun burned brightly in a clear sky as the first Rilani families returned to their restored homeworld. The cities had been rebuilt with human-inspired disaster resistance features, but they retained the artistic beauty and cultural significance that made them uniquely Rilani. Ambassador Thales stood in the same chamber where the council had voted to send their desperate distress signal. Now it served as the headquarters for the Rilani Emergency Response Division, equipped with quantum communication arrays capable of receiving distress calls from across the galaxy. The first call came 3 weeks after the human fleet departed. A species called the Dindari faced ecological collapse on their homeworld due to industrial contamination. Their message was heartbreakingly similar to the Rilani's original plea for help. "Prepare the response fleet," Thale ordered his staff. "Send word to our human partners and any other network members in range. The Dindari need our help, and we will not fail them." As Rilani ships departed for their first rescue mission, Thale reflected on the transformation his people had undergone. They had sent out a cry for help as a dying civilization facing extinction. The humans had answered that call and taught them something more valuable than mere survival. They had taught them how to live for others. The humans had been right about one thing from the beginning. The galaxy did need more species who refused to give up when situations seemed hopeless. Now, the Rilani were determined to become exactly that kind of people. In his final report to the Galactic Emergency Response Network, Thale wrote, "We called out in our darkest hour expecting either salvation or conquest. Instead, we received something far more precious. We learned what it means to be worthy of saving others." The humans didn't just rescue our bodies, they rescued our souls. Now, we understand that the greatest gift any species can receive is the opportunity to give that same gift to someone else. The message traveled across the galaxy, reaching human space and dozens of other member worlds in the network. Somewhere among the stars, other species facing their own crises would soon discover that help was coming not from conquerors or saviors, but from partners who understood that everyone deserves a chance to see tomorrow's sunrise.